What's up guys, and welcome to the channel. It's Juana here, founder and CEO of Supwell. With the NFL kicking off this week, I wanted to do a fun spin on a rotation video and look at some of my current training shoes within the context of an NFL fantasy draft. So here are the ground rules for this fantasy draft. So I looked at all the current shoes in my lineup and I tried to assign where each of them would go if I were building a fantasy roster. So we got our running backs, our wide receivers, our quarterback, our flex, our kicker, and our D. All right, so first up, we got our running backs. And if you're playing in a PPR league, points per reception, you know, running backs are those consistent scorers, the ones that you can rely on each week to get in the end zone or at least get a ton of touches when they're driving down the field. Also, those safety outlets a lot of times for those rookie quarterbacks who might not be slinging it downfield all the time. So in my rotation, I looked at running backs as the daily trainer. You know, those shoes that are going to be getting the most mileage, consistently going to durable, though running backs as of late are not very durable, but those ones that you can pull for week after week, day after day, and count on them to do the best job. So for me, my RB1, that running back one, is gonna be the Adizero SL. Now this thing is an absolute workhorse. This is the type of shoe, it's like Christian McCaffrey, right? It can do everything. It can go straight up the middle, it can handle that classic 8-mile run where you just gotta get through it. It can do some faster work, it can go in the slot, it can go down the field, it can play X. It does absolutely everything. Right now, this is my #1 shoe. I love it. I've put probably 100 miles on it in the past 2 weeks. It can do no wrong for me. Just like Christian McCaffrey, who's on one of my fantasy teams, so please don't get injured, McCaffrey. Next, I got the RB2. So again, this is gonna be that consistent scorer, the one you can rely on, but it's not gonna be as durable, it's not gonna be as reliable as RB1, and for me, that is going to be the Hoka Mach 5. Now, this is a great shoe. It's so versatile. I love lacing this thing up, no matter if I'm going for an easy run with my family or if I'm gonna be ripping off some intervals at the track. But the one downfall is it does not have an outsole. So it's kind of like that older running back that might have had a bit of a injury kind of prone past few seasons, but taking a flyer on it, putting in that RB2 spot, seeing what it can do, that's gonna be the Mach 5. I hope this thing can hold up for another 100 miles, but who knows? All right, next up, we got the wide receivers. So these are the speedy guys in the rotation. These are the ones that you're gonna lace up when you want just a little extra zoom to go down the field. They're not gonna be as reliable scorers as those running backs, but when you need some points, you can count on them to do the job. Now for me, my wide receiver one is going to be the New Balance Rebel V3. This thing is super speedy. It's also super comfortable. It's almost as good as a running back, but the downside here is I can't pull for this every day just because the softness of the foam. I like something with a bit more of a firm feel to it for those everyday miles, which is why I go for the Adizero SL. But for faster training, for faster daily miles, for something that's also very reliable, I can use the Rebel V3. So this slots into that wide receiver one. It's almost like a slot receiver. You know it's just gonna be racking up those points week after week. It's like that old school Wes Welker, Tom Brady relationship where it's just that valve straight through the middle of the field. Yeah, you might get clocked and almost get your head taken off, but you're gonna be scoring a lot of points. All right, next we got that wide receiver 2. So not gonna be as points heavy as that wide receiver 1, but this is the speediest guy, the one who's going flying down the sideline, catching those touchdowns. This is what I project someone like Stephon Diggs might be this year, or maybe even a DeAndre Hopkins, right? A little bit past his prime, not gonna be going down through the center of the field, getting all those dink and dunk type passes, but when you need to score, that's the guy. For me, that's going to be the Hyperion Max, right? I've done a few videos on this guy at this point. This is not a comfortable shoe. This is not a daily trainer. It's not even like the Rebel where I can lace it up for any type of run and be relatively comfortable. This is a harsh but fast shoe. Again, like that Jamar Chase just straight down the sideline, it's all or nothing. That's what this shoe is. It's an all or nothing type of shoe. When you want to go for it, when you want to hammer some pace, Hyperion Max is there for me. But on those other days where I'm feeling a little bit beat up, or I'm not sure if I can quite hit my paces, I'm not going to be pulling for this. All right, guys, next up, we got the quarterback. Now, you know, in fantasy, if you're an avid fantasy player, your quarterback isn't really the one who's gonna win or lose the game for you most weeks. Now, in our running shoe rotation, that is the race day shoe. We all know in our heart of hearts the race day shoe is not going to make or break our race. Whether we go with the Vaporfly or the Pegasus, probably won't make us get a PR either way, but we lace up those carbon plated shoes to see if we can get the most out of ourselves and maximize our training. Now, for me, that race day pick this season is going to be the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3. At least in my current lineup, this is the one that I'll likely pull for my next half marathon, unless I decide to get the Vaporfly 3 in the meantime. But this one has been really good to me. I have another pair, it's pink, that I used for all my long runs last season. This season I'm going plateless for my long runs, but I also used that pink one for the Charlotte Marathon last year. In my rotation right now, this is the one that I'm pulling for to make me feel my best when I need to hit that PR. Alright, next up we got the Flex. Now the Flex is that do-it-all guy on your roster. Some weeks you might be calling him up off the bench. Other weeks, if you call someone from your bench to the running back slot, you put your RB2 in your Flex. But for me in the running shoe rotation, the Flex is that do-it-all shoe that can play any role you need it to up and down the roster. And right now that is the Tracksmith Elliott Runner. You can see from the wear and tear on this thing, it's absolutely smoked. I've used it a ton. Now, I've taken this to Austin twice. I've taken this to New York City 2 or 3 times. I've taken it to the beach. I've taken it to Massachusetts. It's gone through multiple airports. It's gone through trails. I've gone hiking, trail running in this thing. It's an absolute tank. I've also done 400-meter repeats at sub 5K pace in this, and it can handle everything. So for me, this is the shoe I'm gonna take with me if I don't have a ton of room in my suitcase for that weekend, or I need something that can do work stuff and running stuff. I know the Tracksmith Elliott Runner is always going to be there for me. Next up, we got the kicker. Now, the kicker in the fantasy lineup is that sometimes it honestly might win the game for you. If the kicker is the last one in your roster and they're playing on Monday night and you only need 8 points to win, sometimes the kicker does win the game for you. Other times, it's just that highly specialized player where you can count on him to get 10 or 15 points when you need him to. And for me, that's gonna be the trail running shoe, which is the Norda 001. Now, I absolutely love this thing. I was running in the Peg Trail before, and this thing, it's completely different than that in that it just fits like a glove. The upper is locked in, dialed in, and this midsole, over time, it's just softened up in a way that the Nike foam doesn't. And compared to other trail shoes, I've found them to be either too firm, or if you're looking at like the Saucony Endorphin Edge or the Speedland GSTAM, they use PIBA and they're too bouncy. This is right in the middle where it's still nice and planted feeling, but it is responsive when you want to pick up the pace. I ran a trail half marathon in this earlier in this year, and one of the best races I've ever run in my life, and that was coming after running 35 miles of other races throughout that weekend, all in the Norda 001. So this thing is like the most reliable kicker ever, like Steven Gostkowski in his prime or Adam Vinatieri in his prime. So I'm gonna be pulling for the Norda 001 as my fantasy kicker this year. All right, guys, finally we got the defense. Now, the defense is, as it says right in there in the name, it's your line of defense. For running shoes, defense is gonna be your line of defense against fatigue, against sore legs, against feeling tired and like you don't want to go out and run that day. For me, that's going to be the Asics Gel-Nimbus 25. This thing is an absolutely beautiful shoe when it comes to protecting your legs. It's got that thick stack of that FF Blast Plus foam that just comfortable, cushioned. It dulls a lot of that impact, and like a great fantasy defense, like a great real life defense in the NFL, it's there to save your legs when you need it most. All right, guys, so there we have it. This is a fun one to do. Let me know what your fantasy draft would look like. What's your quarterback? What's your race day shoe right now? Who's your RB2, that backup daily trainer? And most importantly, what's your line of defense against fatigue and injury at the moment? As always, thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, and I'll make sure to keep you up to date on the latest and greatest in the world of performance running shoes.